Electricast.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
The PC gave us computing power at home, the internet connected us, and mobile let us do it pretty much anywhere. Now generative AI lets us communicate with technology in our own language using our own senses. But figuring it all out when you're living through it is a totally different story. Welcome to Leading the Shift, a new podcast from Microsoft Azure. I'm your host, Susan Ettlinger. In each episode, leaders will share what they're learning to help you navigate all this change with confidence. Please join us. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
And that those feelings of failure all wrapped up into a nice little gift box of, you did it. It's a thing you've done now. Congratulations. And so, yeah, really rewarding. I was very excited for it. I have ADHD. I would love to have a game that's going while I'm working, that's not taking up all of my attention. There's some climate change themes in there, but I think one that I like to draw into more is our loneliness theme. And so we kind of address that a little bit in the narrative.
Hi, welcome to Brain Arcade. I'm Chris Cross, your host, and today we're going to be talking to Ayla Derrick. Ayla or Ayla? Which do you prefer?
Ayla, you're right.
Ayla Derrick?
It's not a preference thing. It's just how it is.
Okay, that's just how it's said. The creator and founder of Cape Bear Games, and also a new game called Plantasia. And we're going to dig into it and also talk a little bit about user behaviors around a super unique game concept. So, Ayla, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Plantasia?
Okay, yeah. So, hi, Ayla here. I, founded Cave Bear Games, my studio, and we are building Plantasia, which is currently out in early access on Steam. So you can check it out now. Plantasia is a blend between Rusty's Retirement, which is a game that came out in early 2024, and an old game from 2007 called Plant Tycoon, which was one of my favorite games growing up as a kid, which basically makes it a gardening simulator that sits on the bottom third of your computer screen. So you're out here actually in space growing plants and then also doing things at the same time on the top of your screen. So it does not take up your entire monitor. It does not take up all of your attention. It does not take up your entire view. And it's an idle game. So these plants take 15, 30 minutes to grow each. So the game is not taking all of your attention all at once, all of the time. It is meant to be there kind of in the background while you do other things like work or school or videos or other games. And it's just there when you kind of need it and you need a little break.
That's super awesome. So there's actually a lot to unpack there, and I'm going to try and go back in a little bit of order. So first of all, for those that don't know, what's an idle game?
So an idle game... And I can give you the whole history of it. It started with Cookie Clicker, the browser game back, in the day.
We don't have to go that far back.
Yeah. I have the whole history. Yeah, basically an idle game, the whole kind of point of it is that the game can progress while you are not there. It does not require your active participation in order to keep going, in order for you to continue gathering resources, XP, for the story to continue, stuff like that. The idle genre became the most popular and remains the most popular in mobile games. But I, and we can talk about it, have a few problems with the way mobile idle does it. And so Plantasia, I feel, kind of brings it back to the roots of it being truly idle, where you do not actually have to be there. I am not asking for your attention 100% of the time. It is just there for when you want it or need it.
So this is awesome. And it's basically, I would have to tell you that I would even go back farther than around the same era as Cookie Clicker. There was a game called Progress Quest, and I downloaded it, Windows 3.1 or something. So not even Windows 95. And what was interesting about it was as a core gamer of the time, I was like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen, but I can't stop checking it.
Yeah.
It became one of this psychological compulsion loop of progress is happening without me. I feel compelled to come back and see how much has changed. And so it's a little bit about that, always checking in on something. But at the time, you have to remember things like Tamagotchi were out. Yes. Seaman was a game. There was a lot of the concept that something is living without you or progressing without you. And that was what was interesting about it. So Progress Quest it was super simple. It was just an XP bar that filled, and then you would level up and then it would just fill again, right?
Yeah.
And it would like XP would go, and it was this text scroll of like, you beat a goblin, you beat a rat, you beat a goblin, you beat a goblin. Oh, you took, and so
Yeah.
it was just the like more mechanical pieces of like a computer RPG. And so the interesting about it though is at first I kind of scoffed at it, but once I realized that I've had this thing running on my desk for like a week, there's something to this. Like an idle game is an absolutely both brilliant, insidious genre, right? Because it digs into your brain in a way that is more passive, like passive engagement.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we know what it is. It's a plant idle game. I'll just leave it at that. So you plant plants, you watch them grow. You can breed them or basically cross-pollinate them so that you could create new plants, and then you get orders. It's not super stressful. It runs at a rhythm that is kind of slow. But what I want you to tell me about is the fact that it only takes up the bottom third of your screen. So can you describe that visually a little bit?
Yeah. So your computer is a square or a rectangle of some sort. And every application that you have open with it is your browser or some sort of game or Spotify, Discord. It takes up your whole screen. And yeah, you can like kind of pull a browser to the side and it'll split your monitor in half. And you can have two things open. And so it's kind of feeds into that idea of I don't want your full attention. And so therefore, I'm not going to take up your whole monitor. I'm not going to make you look at everything all the time. And so, yeah, it sits at the very bottom third of your computer screen in a long horizontal rectangle down there at the bottom. And it can be hidden behind other applications, or it can be locked up in front so that it is always there no matter what you're doing. It sits above or below your eye level. If you're looking directly at your computer screen, it's kind of a little bit below. You have to look down at it. And that's kind of the only effort that you have to do besides like clicking in the game, right? So you can have, your work, your study, your video up in the top 2/3 of the screen. And that is where your eyes naturally go. And then if you're like, oh, man, I'm a little distracted, I'm a little bored, your eyes start to wander and you wander down to the bottom of your screen where you have some plants growing. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, this plant has finished growing and it looks cool. I've never seen that before. And then you're interested in that for just a couple minutes, get that distraction out of the way, and you come back up to what you were doing originally.
So there's a couple of concepts I want to pull out of that and talk about for a second. So there's the concept, I call it eye walking.
Oh,
right. So when you play a game, your eyes are constantly in motion. And so you can do eye tracking and get hotspots for your game and do like focus tests where you see where people are looking, et cetera, and check the effectiveness of like UI or what they're looking at in specific situations, et cetera. But like one of the things that I used to consider was like, how are people's eyes walking around the screen? Right. And when. And so what's interesting, and here I have a question, because I realized I had a little bit of a desire to put your game at the top of the screen.
And we've gotten that suggestion multiple times. We do hope to be able to implement it by final release. Okay.
So the reason why, though, I think is for me, and I can only speak about my own psychology of this stuff, is that my eyes have to walk through Funland to get to non-fun land, which is the start bar. And so the start bar has work on it. And so essentially you've created an oasis on the bottom third between work and work.
Interesting.
And so the reason that I want to have it up top is I can completely leave workland to get there, as opposed to like sort of shortchanging myself through fun times into like, oh my God, my Slack, right?
That's a really good description.
Right. Yeah. Well, because like you get like a Slack notification, you get that little badge, and now I have to look through an area that I think of as fun. And for me, that would be the way that I break down, how I would prefer people's eyes to walk. Now that's a generalization. I would say a large portion of the audience doesn't even know you could move the start bar to somewhere else. Right.
Yeah.
But most people will use it with the Windows start bar at the bottom. So let's just assume it's staying at the bottom third. Sure. When you got here, talk to me a little bit about that decision, like the actual moment where you're like, you know what? I don't need the whole screen.
Well, I kind of just copied it. Rusty's Retirement did it.
Okay.
That was the original game that pioneered this innovation of the portion screen game. And it sits at the bottom of the screens very similarly to Plantasia. But for me, I was following Rusty's Retirement's development before it came out. And as soon as that demo dropped, I played it the first day. And I was very excited for it. I have ADHD. I would love to have a game that's going while I'm working, that's not like taking up all of my attention. So I was very, very excited for it. And as soon as I played the demo, I knew that this worked. And I immediately thought of Plant Tycoon back from my childhood and how I hated that game took up my whole screen, because then I just had times where, and 2 monitors didn't exist back then. People just didn't have 2 monitors. So it took up my whole screen all the time. And I just had to either be forced to watch my plants grow, or I had to close the game and then hope that I opened it up again in time before my plants died, which they always died. So immediately solved that issue. And I was like, I want to make Plant Tycoon in this format. And it was an instant kind of idea for me. Yeah, it just works.
Yeah, it's awesome. One of the things, especially when I talk to younger or just starting out game designers, is that everybody starts intuitive.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's a little bit of like, I like this peanut butter and I like this chocolate, smash them together.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
But like your subconscious is telling you something and you should listen to it. And sometimes, like, I don't know, like if I was working at THQ a couple years ago and you pitched this to me, I don't know that it would go through the pitch process. You know what I mean? I'd be like, I don't know. Yeah. But here's the thing that I want, like, address this as if you were pitching it to me at a publisher.
I've never pitched before.
Oh, well, I'm going to ask you very direct questions. Okay. I know you've never pitched before. It is a unique skill.
Yeah.
Pitching to publishers.
I need some practice. I plan on doing it in the future.
It's not that difficult. I can teach you. In fact, we'll just put it into books. I'll teach you how to pitch.
Yeah.
It's so much more than just putting in a deck. So, however, this is information that you will need in that pitch deck, which is, who is your target audience? And so what's built into this a little bit, and especially because of the game you've decided to build, is that when considering your target audience, we're going to cross into psychology discussions easily, because that's part of the original consideration.
Yeah. Audience was a difficult question for me to answer. I come from a writing background. I mean, I was an English teacher, and I remember going through schooling and audience, they always told me, like, write for your audience, know who your audience is. And I managed to get it after a while, but I remember that it was a bit of a struggle for me to understand. And then all of a sudden now I'm in games and they're like, who's your audience? Who's playing your games? And I was like, I'm playing my game. Like, I'm making it because I want it. Right. And so I had to like think of like, okay, what actually is my audience? Who am I actually going for? And I had some help with mentors and stuff. And I still don't feel like it's super solid, to be honest. But so, it's people who have computers.
Oh, sorry. Okay, people who have computers. Let's start there. But I think the answer that you're looking for. So I've already stated, like, early game design is all intuitive. Right? So your journey to being able to identify audiences and have empathy for people that aren't you, right, actually starts with identifying your characteristics. Kind of coldly and dispassionately, and saying like, okay, if I'm the audience, what is it about me that makes me perfect for this game? And then you build out the nearby cohorts, and then you sort of build out from there. It's a little bit like playing a role-playing game. You basically roll up a bunch of characters. You say, are they good for this adventure or not? Right? Yeah. And so essentially we need your character sheet first. So I want you to go through, like, what makes you the target player for Plantasia?
Well, first of all, I have ADHD, so neurodivergent. I get distracted a lot. And so I like the idea of having a game that can manage my distractions for a couple of minutes, rather than what I ultimately always do is like go on my phone and then I'm completely detached from my computer and my work. And I find it hard to jump back into it. So that was kind of the big one, right? That's what drew me to Rusty's Retirement in the beginning. But I also work on my computer. I'm on my computer all day, every day, right? And so it's not a game made for the PS5. It's not a game even made for mobile or the Switch, right? It's a game made for the PC, for the computer, for people who work on their computer all day, and they can have this game open for 8 hours a day, right? But then it's also for people who like plants. If you like plants, here's some more plants. But specifically for me, it's for people who like plants, but continuously and always kill them and just cannot keep them alive. And in Plantasia, they can't die. You cannot kill the plant. And then there's also aesthetics. I really like how things look. That's a dopamine trigger for the ADHD. And we will, not currently, we are working on it this month, working on a decor system for the game so that you can customize it to match your very own desktop aesthetic, match the same lights as are in your computer and your keyboard and your play mat and all that fun stuff.
Okay, that's fun. So short attention span, not required to have ADHD, but to have, well, actually the way that we're all
distracted.
Everybody gets distracted. In this day and age, the size of content is getting shorter and shorter. True. And so we're sort of training ourselves towards short attention span theater anyway. Yeah. So like people with short attention spans, like plants, so you need the distraction. So it's entertainment for somebody who's on their computer all the time, which either college kids or office workers.
Yep.
And then, so there we have two sort of broader groups we can start to talk about. People who like plants, that's a larger cohort that we can start to talk about, right? So we could, like, you see how I'm trying to home in a little bit?
Yeah.
And it's like, it is still a little vague. And I would have to say, though, that traditional marketing definitions are actually not relevant anymore. That we'll talk about that in another episode. But but I think you've got enough of a definition there for like short attention span plant lovers in college or at a computer desk job, right? Yeah. Where IT allows them to install stuff that isn't, or at least they work from home.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Even working from home. When some companies have like, remote Big Brother on your machine. And so you can't install stuff anyway. I had a computer
like that for one job, but I just used my own computer for it because mine's better with monitors.
Yeah. So talking about splitting your attention span again, right?
Yeah.
Like two computers. Now I have context between like home and work on two different computers. So plants, there's something about plants. Tell me about why that feels good.
Well, plants are nice. They filter the air. They make you feel more connected to nature, especially in this day and age where people don't really go outside. I'm a forager myself. I like to go look at plants and use them, but I never actually, I live in a downtown urban area and without a car. And so I rarely ever actually go out, and I would love to just have my house filled with plants. And it just makes you feel better. Scientifically, it's just better for you, but I can't because I kill them. So next best thing is have them on my computer.
Got it. Awesome. I mean, you could get some plastic plants, but they're not going to have.
No, I don't like those. They're plastic and they just look bad. I don't like them.
They're like waxy looking and not interesting. Yeah.
Not a fan.
Well, so we can get you some very hardy things like a rubber plant, or like a rubber tree.
Yeah.
That's what I need. And some succulents. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're the audience and we've now defined some characteristics of that without knowing those things, actually just knowing those things intuitively, how did you design the game around that?
Yeah. So the music, first of all, the music is fantastic and you should listen to it even if you don't play the game. It is on all streaming platforms. The music is lo-fi inspired, which is, very common for at least people my age to go on YouTube and search up Lo-Fi Girl and have her live going while they work to have that kind of audio stimulation, especially the neurodivergent folks, to help them focus. I use it all the time. And so I wanted the music in the game to add to that focus tool aspect. So the music is lo-fi inspired. There's no like voices that distract you. It's all just music that vibes and is good. So that was one serious decision that I made. Another one is like notification noises, like when your plant is done growing, or if the growth triggers pop up, or like there's a narrative progress or a quest that's been unlocked. There are no notification noises that will distract you, that will draw you out of whatever focus that you have doing whatever it is you are on your computer. They are sounds that blend in with the music that's already going, the environment that is already there, so that if you were like looking at the game and you heard that noise and you're like, oh, okay, this means, this thing is ready. But if you're not looking at the game, if you're really hyper fixated and focused into whatever it is you're doing, that noise is not going to permeate your brain and be like, oh, I got to go look at Plantasia now. So we don't want to draw your attention away from what you are doing. We want you to focus on what you are doing. And then the fact that the plants take like 15 minutes to 30 minutes to grow, that means that you don't have to feel like you need to be looking down at your screen all the time to make sure that you're taking care of your plants and harvesting them all the time and getting all the resources max capacity that you can do. It's, people tend to need a break between 15 and 30 minutes. And so naturally they will go down and look, and they'll have a couple plants ready, and they'll be able to do something and then go back.
So that's interesting. When I first played it, and I know I played the demo version, which was tuned to be a little bit faster.
It was.
But when I first played it, I was still kind of impatient, right?
Really?
Well, because
one was so quick.
It was so fast. But I got the feeling for everything, but like it really came down to like I kind of wanted it to be more intrusive, but that's just my muscle memory from playing other games. And so like once
you kind of got
once I settled
yourself.
once I settled in, I was like, oh. Actually, I could want this a little slower. Once I got past the first couple plants, and then I got to like quote unquote the missions of like, oh, you need 6 of these or 7 of those.
Right.
It was like there was no extra pressure, but it was definitely one of those things where I was like, yeah, I could see setting this on cook and like coming back. Because I mean, I do that in real life. I like to cook, right? And there are times that like one of the hardest things to learn is be patient.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Like don't keep flipping the burger. It's not going to cook. Don't or like
watching the paint dry.
Yeah, exactly. Or like the one, I don't know who I heard this from, but like, when you open an oven, you look at stuff and
and it makes it actually make it slower.
Right. And so like the thing to remember is this, if you're looking, you're not cooking.
Yeah.
But I do set reminders a few minutes ahead of time because I do get distracted doing other things.
Well, you don't want to burn anything.
Right. I would need the alarm to go off so that I have time to get to it.
And that's why your plants don't die. You cannot burn your plants.
Right. Right. So the sound design, who did all the sound design?
Oh my gosh. Andrew Burns, Andy, our audio director, he's done every single sound all by himself. He has 10 years of composing experience just outside of games. And so, he is technically considered a junior in the games industry nowadays. And, despite his applications, cannot find a job in games. But he's a genius, extremely talented. If anyone has listened to the music, or if you want to listen to the music, it's easy to understand that it's fantastic. It's just an easy sell.
So he's a composer and did all the sound design?
Yeah.
Okay.
He just is so good. I'm very, very lucky to have Andy. He's amazing, and he understood my vision from the start. He just really got me, and we clicked immediately, and he has needed very little direction at all. He has just done everything basically perfectly the first time. Yeah, I love him so much.
That's amazing for something like this because it is so not standard. Usually when you say video game music or whatever, like people either go towards like they imagine like chip tunes or orchestral.
It's definitely very much a calm soundtrack that doesn't have any like big rises in action, right? It's very.
Oh my God, that's perfect. I'm gonna have to get it. I thought I added it on Spotify, but I can't find it, so I'm gonna have to.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, it's a Plantasia music from the orbit of Codal 4 by Climbing Tree. That's his artistic name. I will work with Andy for the rest of my life if he lets me. I love him. Yeah,
that's amazing. So
he can do anything.
He sounds really good. You may not get that chance. Like you might.
He's a great so far. He's a great so far. We'll see if he surpasses me, but hopefully we can grow together.
So some of the best stuff, design work I ever did was also with like I worked with 2 composers, and my favorite was I worked with Michael Giacchino before he got uber big. Like he was still big, but he got really big. And some of the best like design and sound exchanges that I've had have been with him. As far as like, here's the concept, and then he would take it, rework some stuff, and he'd give it back to me. Like, it was just amazing. Brain Arcade will be right back.
Hilton brings you new ways to stay, with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
So that user base, let's recap. So somebody who wants to play something while they're working, which is not everybody, because some people just like to focus one thing at a time, right? True. But it's the sort of distraction game. Likes plants at their computer all day. So we sort of wandered into like a marketing profile that I think works for people What we need to talk about now, though, is I think I want you to say it back to me, like, and you don't have to say it right now, but this is part of making that pitch, which is what's the actual user fantasy? And so there's a fulfillment, like when I play God of War, it's a power fantasy. When I play a driving game, it's also a power fantasy, but expressed through like mechanical power. And then we can talk about themes. There's a little bit of a theme to yours of like save the world, because you're repopulating plants. So there's a little bit of a heroic thing. What's how would you define the actual fantasy fulfillment for the gamer of Plantasia?
That's a hard question. I'm going to do my best. I don't know how well I will do at this. You said there's a bit of a saving the world. There's some climate change themes in there, but I think one that I like to draw into more is our loneliness theme.
Okay.
The world does a lot of remote work now, and I'm a huge proponent of remote work. I couldn't imagine life any other way. Please don't make me go back in the office. But at the same time, we don't get that human connection that we did in the office. And so it's a bit lonelier here at home when you're working on your screen all the time. And so we kind of address that a little bit in the narrative, where you are alone on this space station. And when you first get there, it's very empty and very desolate. And the music reflects this as well. But as you continue to grow your plants and get more plants and progress through the story, you meet more NPCs that are working on your team, but they're not on your space station. They're elsewhere. And you have your AI companion, Bear, that is talking to you and you can talk to whenever you want or need to. And your space station gets more vibrant through, you get to collect more items and decor, and you can, customize your area to look the way that you want it to. And then ideally, there will be some moving parts, little automation bugs that move around so that it feels more alive as you progress through the game. And that loneliness kind of theme is worked through there as well, where you grow in relationships and you don't feel as lonely as you did before. Kind of. I don't know if that's the right answer. That's what I like to think of. I think the loneliness theme is a fun thing to play with. We'll see if it works.
So let me tell you what I extracted from that. It's difficult. Like when you think about pitching to publishers, you actually have a tendency to try to pitch lots of exciting stuff, right? Which is why generally this is a very difficult one for that use case, because it's more like release it, show them the KPIs, see if they can boost it. That's it, right? Like that's the pitch. But it's interesting because you're hitting something that I really like about what you build, in that you're hitting these very real and contemporary themes and what's happening in the world right now. So sometimes when I rephrase the way to get to the player fantasy of what am I fulfilling here, is actually if you take a graph out and you put your story progression on it, right? And so you and your game progression is the next layer down. And then the final layer is actually you put the player progression as a person down, outside the screen. Who are they and what journey are they going on?
Right.
And so in the words that you used, what I would say is that your game is about, their journey is about being lonely and then not being lonely, right?
Yeah.
And then also taking a little bit of ownership or control over a small part of their life in an effort to make the world better.
Yeah.
Right? So there's this story arc for the player, which is here I am alone at my computer, and the game lets me go on this slow journey, right, to not being feeling a little bit of catharsis in that my loneliness is paying off in saving the world, but also become less lonely the more I pursue that, right?
Yeah.
And so that's not a pitch, but that's how I would encapsulate the player arc through this. And then I don't know that it's even worth making a snappy version of that, because I don't think that's this game. It's not. No. It does give me insight on how to sell your game, though.
Oh,
right?
No,
because we've now identified even more about the psychology of people that are going to be attracted to this, and it's actually interesting. I think you're going to have to follow some pretty non-standard, potentially marketing routes, right?
Yeah, I really chose a difficult one.
People. Right, but you were identifying a psychological starting point for the players, and it's actually a little bit tough because they're already starting out kind of lonely, which means they might be a little disengaged.
Yeah.
right? But loneliness is common for like almost everybody at this point in
Right.
their life. It's really just about finding those moments where you can appeal to that emotion and say, like, I wouldn't literally call people lonely, but basically finding a way to get them in that moment where they're like, man, I really wish I had some plants to grow, right?
Yeah.
Like, or I wish I was making a difference, or I wish I was saving the world in some way. So
Mhm.
back to question, is that why you picked a space context?
Oh my gosh. I think the loneliness came after the space decision. I think once
Okay.
we realized we were in space and we were alone on this space station, I think that's where the loneliness idea came from. I think what I was going with was a solar punk theme because
Mhm.
I personally like that genre. It fit with the, saving the world and living equally with plants and growing plants and stuff. And, the sci-fi art style that I wanted. And then the loneliness theme, yeah, came after because it just kind of fit with what we were already doing.
This is interesting. I would argue with you that your subconscious probably led you
Maybe.
to the loneliness theme because picking space in the first place is already a pretty cold experience potentially. Like being on a
Yeah.
space station is inherently lonely.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there is science fiction where space stations are not lonely, but they're monolithic, gigantic. Like it might as well just be a regular
And they're
city.
still alone. Yeah.
Right. Making the context like a space station,
Yeah.
like you're already headed towards a potential loneliness theme.
Yeah.
Right. Because
Yeah.
like it's just space is vast. It's cold. It's,
Mhm.
it's
Exactly.
solitary. So I would say that your subconscious is probably like, listening
Oh,
to
I'm
your
sure.
intuition here probably led you to like a really strong theme.
Yeah. And I wonder, I'm trying to remember. I know I wanted solar punk, but I can't quite remember what put us in space exactly. I wonder if that was me or if it was my narrative designer, Val. I'll have to ask him and see if he remembers his memories a bit better than mine.
I ask him. I'd love to hear. Like,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear how you got to that decision.
Oh,
All right,
yeah. I'll have to ask.
plants. So, like, I notice all the plants are fictional. Did you just intentionally stay mostly away from real plant? Like, basically,
Yeah.
was that intentional? Or like,
Yeah, and it fit narratively as well. We're reviving. The goal of the game is to revive an alien planet,
uh-huh.
not Earth. I didn't want to do Earth. There's a lot of strings attached with that if you go with
Mhm.
Earth, whereas with an alien planet it can be whatever you want. And then, yeah, I mean, houseplants, right? People like houseplants, and I don't need to grow another pothos.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I want something new and exciting and colorful. And so alien flora
Right.
works better that way. So it worked narratively, but also, yeah, it was a very specific design decision. And more freedom for my artists as well to world build and create those cool plants, which they have done an amazing job at. So yeah, a lot of
So
reasons, but very, very intentional.
we're gonna run out of. Well, we're not running out of time, but we're sort of in the final stretch here. I
Mhm.
have to ask you a little bit differently. How was this experience for you on your journey a little bit from a psychological standpoint? Because I think you don't give yourself enough credit for how much design you know intuitively. Like your journey on this has been a little bit different. But tell
Mhm.
me about like, was this a cathartic experience? Like
Oh,
how did this work for you?
extremely rewarding.
Okay.
Maybe I blame it on my ADHD. I don't know if that's the real cause, but I have a lot of ideas. I like to think. I
Uh-huh.
think a lot, whether I want to or not. My brain is always going, but I
Uh-huh.
don't have the motivation or the skills to create those things. So I love arts and crafts. I want to be crafty so bad. And I just think of all these cool things to do. And I have these hobbies that are just sitting in piles everywhere, classic ADHD thing. But when I do end up creating something that's bad, like I'm not happy with it, I'm too much of a perfectionist. I feel
Mhm.
like I don't have the skills to do it. And so the fact that I had what I thought was a really good idea and one that I really wanted because I loved Plant Tycoon so much.
Right.
And the fact that it exists now because other people have done it for me is so rewarding. And so it's just been a complete blast the whole time. I'm extremely thankful for my team. The fact that they thought this was a good idea, the fact that they joined me doing this voluntarily without pay, and that they like it as much as I do. But the fact that it started with me is, selfishly extremely rewarding and just so cool. Definitely a highlight of my life.
It's very impressive that like most people don't get to this point. They start one of these things, they start organizing, and they get frustrated or they don't push forward.
Yeah.
And it's like like kudos to you for just finishing your first project.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing, and we're not wired this way, is especially when you're an indie game designer or an indie game maker, you have to start to learn how to safely fail and fail often.
Yeah.
Right. Because the pressures of making indie games can lead you to misconceptions about the targets or goal. You start to imagine what you wanted on day one, and you have to be a little bit flexible in like, oh, that's not what I'm going to end up with. Right. But like the journey is actually just as important as the product.
Well, I have a little anecdote. Like I said, I have many ideas and I just don't have the motivation or the skills to achieve them. And I've had this is a frustration that I've had my entire life. I remember I just could never finish anything. I could never finish a game. I've only beaten a handful of games in my life. I'm doing better now that I'm in the industry, but just a continual repeated frustration of wanting something in my hands, something that I have done, a physical thing, and never being able to do it. And I remember the first time I had what I thought was a really good idea that I was really, really passionate about. It was a writing website, a role play writing website. And I told myself, I was 12, I think. And I was like, you're going to finish this. If you don't finish anything else in the world, you're going to finish this. It took me 10 years, but eventually I published a website and I did it. And, some people might not say it's finished. It's not very good. It's not up anymore. It doesn't work, but I finished it. I published the website. I had players. I did it. And that was, really rewarding, but it took 10 years and over time, it just ended up not being what I wanted it to be. And I wasn't cool with those concessions that I had to make. And then I had to involve other people and they wanted to do other things that I didn't want. And so this is like all of that frustration and that failure, those feelings of failure, all wrapped up into a nice little gift box of you did it. It's the thing you've done now. Congratulations. Really rewarding.
A super rewarding and valuable gift that you can give to yourself. So I have to have you back again because I want to talk to you about the volunteer community. You dropped that in. That was a detail of what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
And so I think that's potentially a whole episode because I'm not just your community. I'm seeing this more common across my wandering through the world is that people are helping each other out.
Definitely.
For different reasons. Okay. Final thing though, what's next? Let's assume you're going to do some, get this out of early access, you finish it and then maybe some DLC or, see where it goes. But what's the next thing you want to design? Do you know? Do you not know? Is there something you want to do?
I maybe have a little bit of an idea. It's not super fleshed out. I haven't involved anyone yet. It's still all in my head. But basically, I have a feeling that I want to capture in a game. And I don't know if that's possible yet, but I think it can be done. And so I think that's what's next for me. It's going to take a while. And I'm in this beginning phases. I really couldn't even pitch the game to you because it's not fully there yet.
That's okay.
So that's what I want. That's what I want to do.
I love though that you've targeted a feeling.
Yeah.
There's a vibe or a feeling that you want to get to. Let me know. I volunteer to help you out with that because I think we need more. Not to say that things shouldn't make money, but I'm just saying is designing for commercial output tends to box your design in, and
it's just not who I am as a person. I'm not money motivated at all, so. I won't be making games like that.
I think you'll be surprised by the time you get to there'll come a point at some where you're designing these games where one comes out and just hits a chord.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, if I can find success with a feeling, rather, I think that's what we could talk about it forever, but I think that's what they want.
Totally.
The gamers want, especially in this environment now. They want to feel.
The grammar with which I grew up with in feeling, right? As far as games go, we were just on the cusp of being able to be more narrative or transformative in the way that games were made and what kind of topics we could take on. I mean, it was very common in the late 90s for game designers to want to make a mass market audience cry, right?
Right.
But that was that's kind of raw and brute force.
Yeah.
Because the tools that were allowed to us were much more blunt than they are now. And I think picking up a specific feeling or vibe, it's absolutely doable for you to find a spot there.
I'm all about the vibes.
It's all about the vibes. Me too. So I think that's all the time we've got for today. Do you have anything you want to close out with? When are you shipping? Like, when is it done? Like,
Done.
out of early access?
If we're lucky, June 30th should be final release day. If we are super lucky, I do not want to extend the project past that. I want to be done.
Yep, knock on wood.
So June 30th, I hope. Don't hold me to that, but yeah.
Awesome. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help with that. I miss the old days because when we shipped something, it was done.
Yeah.
There was no patching, no day zero patch, no
live
live service. You finished an idea and it went out. And I think we need a return to that. Like, I think
I've learned a lot and I want to be able to utilize those learnings.
What's the next thing?
Something
right?
new.
Like, like the sort of fractal pattern of iteration actually applies to the games that you make too, because you're always layering things on, or always, like, there are game designers that have explored the same theme for their whole career, essentially.
That's
and it
what
just
I
keeps
do.
getting
better.
I wouldn't even say complex, but like the angles at which it's explored keep changing.
Well, we look at, and I don't know his name or the studio because I'm terrible at that, but like Split Fiction and It Takes Two, and he's made 3 of those games now.
Right.
And they've gotten better every time.
Which is also another attack on loneliness, by the way.
True.
Those games. Okay. Like, before we launch into another hour discussion about like which games attack loneliness, besides most of them, and then also there's just other common themes. Definitely come back. I want to talk to you post-launch about what's next, but also about your volunteer community, because I think I might be cooking something up that I want to pitch to you.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here. Bye.
Brain Arcade is a Princess Hermit production, produced by Kyrene Kim, music and mixing by Jonathan Ontiveros. The podcast is hosted by me, Chris Cross. You can find me and my other endeavors at coffeeacross.com.